The coffee in Jake Morrison's cup had gone cold an hour ago, but he barely noticed. He stood at the large window of Frontier Station Alpha, watching ships come and go in the busy spaceport below. Some were human vessels carrying supplies and new colonists. Others belonged to alien species from across the galaxy, their strange shapes and glowing engines creating a light show against the dark void of space. Jake checked his watch again. Lucy was late, and that was not like her. His 16-year-old daughter was many things, stubborn, curious, and sometimes too brave for her own good. But she was never late when they had plans to meet. They had agreed to watch the sunset together from this observation deck after her xenobiology class ended. The station around them hummed with activity. Humans walked alongside tall, thin aliens with blue skin and extra arms. Short, furry creatures from the outer rim chatted with human traders about shipping routes and cargo prices. The Galactic Federation had worked hard to make places like Frontier Station Alpha safe meeting points for all species. Jake's communication device buzzed. He pulled it out quickly, hoping to see a message from Lucy explaining why she was running late. Instead, he found a message from the station's security office. His blood ran cold as he read the words. Captain Morrison, please report to Security Level 5 immediately. Priority 1. Jake had been a soldier for most of his adult life. He knew what Priority 1 meant. It meant something had gone very wrong, and it probably involved someone he cared about. He left his cold coffee on the window ledge and walked quickly toward the security levels, his military training making him move with purpose through the crowded corridors. Security Level 5 was restricted to authorized personnel only. Jake's clearance got him through the checkpoints, but the serious faces of the guards told him everything he needed to know before anyone said a word. Something terrible had happened. Commander Steve Parker met him at the door to the main security office. Parker was a good man, honest and direct, but Jake could see worry lines around his eyes that had not been there that morning. "Jake, I need you to sit down," Parker said, gesturing to a chair near his desk. "Where is Lucy?" Jake asked, remaining standing. He had learned long ago that bad news did not get better when you were sitting down. Parker activated a wall screen, showing security footage from the education wing of the station. The timestamp showed it was from 2 hours ago, right around the time Lucy's class should have ended. Jake watched as normal station life played out on the screen. Students walked through hallways, some human, some alien, all of them young and excited about their studies. Then the footage changed. The hallway suddenly filled with a strange, shimmering light. 3 shapes appeared out of nowhere, moving fast, through the corridors. Jake recognized them immediately from his military files. Zephyrians, insect-like aliens with 6 legs, 4 arms, and minds that worked like computers. They were supposed to be peaceful researchers, members in good standing of the Galactic Federation. The security footage showed the Zephyrians moving with military precision through the education wing. They used some kind of stunning weapon on the human students and staff, leaving everyone unconscious but apparently unharmed. Jake counted 14 young humans being carried away by the aliens, including a girl with long brown hair who looked just like her mother. Lucy. They used advanced cloaking technology, Parker explained, his voice tight with anger. Our sensors never detected their ships until they were already inside our shields. By the time we realized what was happening, they were gone. Jake stared at the screen, watching his daughter being carried away by creatures that had no right to even be near. Human children. The footage showed the Zephyrians loading their unconscious victims into transport pods, then disappearing in the same shimmering light that had brought them. How long ago? Jake asked, his voice deadly calm. 2 hours and 17 minutes, Parker replied. We contacted the Federation Council immediately. Ambassador Helen Carter is personally handling the diplomatic response. Jake almost laughed, but there was no humor in it. Diplomatic response? They took my daughter. Jake, I know how you feel, but we have to follow proper channels. The Zephyrians are Federation members. We cannot just what? Jake interrupted, turning to face Parker directly. Cannot just go get our children back from aliens who invaded our station and kidnapped them? Parker looked uncomfortable. Everyone on Frontier Station Alpha knew who Jake Morrison was, even if they did not talk about it openly. Before he became head of Colonial Defense, before he settled down to raise his daughter in peace, Jake had been something else entirely. He had been the ghost of Kepler Prime, the human who ended the Andromedan War by doing things that were still classified at the highest levels of Federation security. The Federation Council has already contacted the Zephyrian Collective, Parker continued. They are demanding the immediate return of all human citizens taken from this station. And what did the Zephyrians say? Jake asked, though he already knew the answer from Parker's expression. They claim the humans were taken for research purposes. They say the subjects will not be harmed, but they refuse to return them until their studies are complete. Jake felt something cold and hard settle in his chest. It was an old feeling, one he had not experienced since his military days. It was the feeling of a predator recognizing that it was time to hunt. How many ships do they have? He asked. Jake, you cannot be thinking. How many ships? Parker sighed and pulled up another file on his screen. Intelligence suggests they have a research facility somewhere in the outer rim, probably heavily defended. The Federation is preparing a formal response. The Federation can take their time, Jake said, turning toward the door. I have a daughter. To get back. Morrison, wait. Parker stood up, his voice taking on an official tone. As head of Colonial Defense, I am ordering you to stand down. Let the Federation handle this through proper channels. Jake stopped at the door and looked back, at Parker. For a moment, the security commander saw something in Jake's eyes that made him take a step backward. It was the look of a man who had spent years in the darkest corners of the galaxy, doing things that kept civilization safe while making sure no one ever had to know about them. Steve, Jake said quietly, I am submitting my resignation from Colonial Defense effective immediately. After that, I am just a father whose daughter has been taken by aliens who think humans make good research subjects. Parker opened his mouth to argue, but Jake was already gone, walking quickly through the corridors toward the private hangar where he kept his ship. Other people moved out of his way without really knowing why, sensing something dangerous in the way he moved. Jake's personal ship, the Nighthawk, was a modified reconnaissance vessel from his military days. It looked like a civilian transport, but underneath its plain exterior lay some of the most advanced technology in human space. He had hoped never to use it for anything more dangerous than family trips to nearby systems. As he began running pre-flight checks, Jake's communication device started buzzing with incoming messages. Word was already spreading through the networks that connected his old military unit. Tony Martinez was asking when and where to meet. Lisa Brooks wanted to know if he needed a pilot. Danny Walsh simply sent coordinates for a rendezvous point, outside Federation space. They all knew what had happened without being told. They all knew what came next. Jake Morrison had spent 15 years trying to be just a father, just a station administrator, just a normal human being. The Zephyrians had just reminded him that some things were more important than being normal. They had taken his daughter, and that was a mistake they would not live to regret for very long. Jake Morrison had not slept in 18 hours, but his hands were steady as he worked on the Nighthawk's weapon systems. The ship's cargo bay had been transformed into a command center, with screens showing star charts, intelligence reports, and tracking data streaming in from sources across the galaxy. The first person to arrive at Frontier Station Alpha was Tony Martinez. He walked into the hangar carrying 2 duffel bags and wearing the same easy smile that had gotten them out of trouble on a dozen different worlds. Tony looked like a friendly mechanic, the kind of man you would trust to fix your ship's engine. What most people did not know was that Tony could turn that same engine into a bomb using nothing but spare parts and creativity. Heard you needed some help with a family problem, Tony said, setting his bags down near the Nighthawk. Something like that, Jake replied, not looking up from his work. You should know this is not official. The Federation wants to handle this through diplomatic channels. Tony laughed and started unpacking his equipment. Jake, when have we ever done anything the official way? Besides, nobody takes kids without paying for it. That is just basic human decency. Lisa Brooks arrived an hour later, piloting a small cargo ship that she landed with impossible precision in the crowded hangar. She was a small woman with short red hair and quick hands that could fly anything with engines. She had once stolen a Centaurian battleship by convincing its crew that she was delivering spare parts. They did not realize their mistake until she was halfway across the system. "Please tell me we are not planning to negotiate with whoever took Lucy," Lisa said as she climbed out of her ship. "No negotiations," Jake confirmed. "We find them, we take our people back, and we make sure this never happens again." Danny Walsh was next to arrive, and his entrance was typically quiet. One moment the hangar seemed empty except for Jake's team, and the next moment Danny was sitting on a crate cleaning his rifle. He was a tall, thin man who rarely spoke, but when he did speak, people listened. In 15 years of combat, Danny had never missed a shot when it mattered. "How many targets?" Danny asked without looking up from his weapon. "Unknown," Jake replied. "Intelligence suggests a research facility, probably in the Outer Rim. Could be anywhere from a few hundred to several thousand Zephyrians." Danny nodded and continued cleaning his rifle. For him, numbers did not matter. Targets were targets. Amy Foster was the last to arrive, and she brought the most important cargo. Amy was a technical specialist who could hack alien computer systems faster than most people could read them. She had spent the last 6 hours breaking into Zephyrian communication networks, and what she found made everyone in the hangar very angry. "They have been planning this for months," Amy said, connecting her portable computer to the Nighthawk's main systems. "The Zephyrians did not just randomly decide to take human children. This was a carefully planned operation." The main screen in the cargo bay lit up with intercepted Zephyrian communications. The text was translated into human standard, but the cold scientific tone of the messages made them even more disturbing to read. "They want to study human psychological responses to stress and captivity," Amy continued. "The Zephyrians have been trying to understand what makes humans so effective in combat situations. They think if they can figure out our secrets, they can create better soldiers for their own military." Jake stopped working and looked at the screen. The Zephyrian messages talked about human test subjects like they were laboratory animals. They discussed psychological conditioning, stress testing, and combat simulation as if they were describing experiments on insects. "They picked the wrong test subjects," Tony said quietly. "How do we find them?" Jake asked Amy. Amy's fingers flew across her keyboard, pulling up star charts and energy readings. "I tracked their hyperspace signatures from the station. The trail leads toward the Kepler Nebula, but it gets fuzzy after that. The nebula interferes with most tracking systems." "But not all of them," Jake said, recognizing the look in Amy's eyes. "I may have borrowed some classified Federation tracking technology," Amy admitted. "The kind they use to hunt pirates in the Outer Rim. If I can get close enough to the nebula, I can follow their quantum wake all the way to their destination." Jake nodded and turned to address his team. These were people who had followed him through hell itself during the war. They had saved each other's lives so many times that keeping count was pointless. Now they were volunteering to help him save his daughter, knowing that they might not survive the mission. "This is not going to be easy," Jake said. "We are talking about assaulting a heavily defended research facility with 5 people and 3 ships. The Federation would need a full battle group for this kind of operation." "The Federation does not have Lucy," Lisa pointed out. "We do this the right way or we do not do it at all." Before Jake could respond, alarms started blaring throughout the hangar. Emergency lights flashed red, and the hangar's main doors began sealing automatically. Through the reinforced windows, Jake could see Federation security forces surrounding the building. Commander Parker's voice came over the intercom system. "Jake Morrison, this is Commander Parker. By order of the Federation Council, you are under arrest for planning unauthorized military action against a Federation member species. Surrender peacefully and no one gets hurt." Jake's team looked at him, waiting for orders. They could fight their way out of the hangar easily enough, but that would make them fugitives from Federation law. It would also waste precious time while Lucy and the other children remained in alien hands. "Jake," Parker's voice continued, "I have orders to use whatever force necessary to stop you from leaving this station. Do not make this harder than it needs to be." Jake walked to the intercom panel and activated it. "Steve, you know why I have to do this. They took children from our station. Human children." The Federation is working on a diplomatic solution, Parker replied. Ambassador Carter is in direct communication with the Zephyrian leadership. They will return the children unharmed once their research is complete. And how long will that take? Jake asked. How long are we supposed to let aliens experiment on our kids while diplomats have meetings? There was silence on the intercom for several seconds. When Parker spoke again, his voice was quieter. Jake, I have my orders. I cannot let you leave. Jake looked at his team, then at the sealed hangar doors, then at the security forces visible through the windows. He had two choices. He could surrender and trust the Federation to eventually negotiate the return of his daughter, or he could fight his way out and become an outlaw. It was not really a choice at all. Amy, can you override the hangar door controls? Jake asked. Give me 30 seconds, Amy replied, her fingers already flying across her keyboard. Tony, I need a distraction. Something loud but not lethal. Tony grinned and pulled a small device from one of his bags. How about a light show? I can overload the station's main power grid. It will not hurt anyone, but it will keep security busy for a few minutes. Do it, Jake ordered. The lights went out throughout Frontier Station Alpha as Tony's device sent cascading power surges through the electrical systems. Emergency lighting flickered on, but the main computer systems were offline. In the confusion, Amy's override commands opened the hangar doors. The Nighthawk's engines roared to life, followed by Lisa's cargo ship and the transport vessel that Danny had arrived in. Within minutes, all three ships were clear of the station and accelerating toward open space. Behind them, Frontier Station Alpha's lights flickered back on as emergency crews worked to restore power. Commander Parker stood in the security office watching Jake Morrison's ships disappear into hyperspace. He should have been angry about being outwitted, but instead he found himself hoping that Jake would find his daughter and bring her home safely. Sir, one of his officers asked, should we pursue them? Parker looked at the tactical display showing 3 small ships heading toward the most dangerous region of space in the galaxy. No, he said quietly. Let them go. Something tells me the Zephyrians are about to learn why humans are the most dangerous species in known space. Jake Morrison and his team were no longer bound by Federation law or diplomatic protocol. They were no longer constrained by rules of engagement or concerns about interspecies relations. They were simply 5 humans going to get their children back, and heaven help anyone who got in their way. The Kepler Nebula stretched across space like a glowing ocean of gas and dust. Beautiful from a distance, it was one of the most dangerous regions in known space. Ships could disappear in the swirling clouds without warning. Sensor readings became unreliable. Even experienced pilots could lose their way and never be found again. Jake Morrison stared at the nebula through the Nighthawk's main view screen and knew that somewhere inside that maze of cosmic debris, aliens were holding his daughter. Prisoner? The thought made his hands clench into fists, but his voice remained calm when he spoke to his team. Amy, what do you have for me? Amy Foster looked up from her computer screens, her face lit by the glow of scrolling data. The quantum trail leads straight into the nebula, but it gets weaker the deeper we go. Whatever the Zephyrians are using to hide their facility, it is very advanced. How advanced? Lisa Brooks asked from the pilot's seat. She was studying navigation charts that showed the nebula's shifting energy patterns. Advanced enough that the Federation has never found it, Amy replied. I am picking up traces of quantum dampening fields and sensor scramblers. This is not just a hidden base. This is a facility designed to be completely invisible to outside detection. Tony Martinez was working on something at the engineering station, surrounded by tools and electronic components. If they went to all this trouble to hide, they must be doing something they do not want anyone to find out about. Danny Walsh, who had been quietly cleaning his weapons in the corner, looked up. How many children did they take from other places? The question hung in the air like a cold wind. Amy's fingers flew across her keyboard as she searched through intercepted Zephyrian communications. What she found made everyone in the ship's command center go very still. Over the past 6 months, there have been 17 reported disappearances of human children from Federation space, Amy said quietly. All of them were written off as accidents or isolated incidents. No one connected them until now. Jake felt something cold and hard settle in his stomach. 17 incidents. 43 children total, Amy confirmed. All between the ages of 12 and 18. All taken from remote stations or colonies where their disappearance could be explained away. The silence in the command center was broken only by the hum of the ship's engines and the distant crackling of the nebula's energy fields. Jake Morrison had fought in wars where entire planets were at stake, but he had never felt anger like this. It was pure and clean and absolutely deadly. They have been hunting our children, he said softly. It gets worse, Amy continued. I found references to something called Project Apex in their communications. They are not just studying human psychology. They are trying to create hybrid soldiers using human genetic material. Tony stopped working and turned around. They are... What? The Zephyrians think human adaptability and aggression are genetic traits that can be copied, Amy explained. They want to create Zephyrian soldiers with human capabilities. Lisa laughed, but there was no humor in it. They have no idea what they are dealing with, do they? No, Jake said, studying the sensor readings from the nebula. But they are about to learn. The three ships moved deeper into the Kepler Nebula, following Amy's tracking signals through clouds of ionized gas that played havoc with their instruments. The nebula was like a living thing, constantly shifting and changing. What looked like a clear path one moment could become a wall of deadly radiation the next. Lisa piloted the Nighthawk with the skill that had made her famous throughout human space. She guided them through energy storms that would have torn apart, larger ships using the nebula's own chaotic nature to mask their approach. Behind her, Tony's cargo hauler and Danny's transport followed in perfect formation, their pilots trusting Lisa's instincts completely. Contact, Amy announced after 3 hours of careful navigation. I am reading artificial structures ahead, multiple ships and what looks like a massive space station. The view screen shifted to show long-range sensor images. Through the swirling gases of the nebula, they could make out the shape of Laboratory Station Omega. It was enormous, easily 10 times the size of Frontier Station Alpha. Docking bays large enough to hold battleships extended from its central hub like the arms of a mechanical spider. How many ships? Jake asked. 12 that I can count, Amy replied. All of them look like military vessels. This is not just a research station, this is a fortress. Jake studied the tactical display showing the Zephyrian fleet. Each ship was larger than anything in his small force. A direct assault would be suicide, which was exactly why it might work. The Zephyrians would never expect 3 small human ships to attack such a heavily defended target. Can you find the children? He asked Amy. Amy's sensors probed the massive station, looking for human life signs among the thousands of alien readings. Got them, she said finally. Central Research Wing, Section 12. I count 47 human life signs, all showing as healthy but under some kind of sedation. 47, Jake repeated. That is more than the 43 missing children. The extra 4 might be adult researchers, Amy suggested. Or they might be children taken from places we do not know about yet. Jake felt his anger growing colder and more focused. Somewhere on that station, his daughter Lucy was being held prisoner by aliens who thought human children made good test subjects. The Zephyrians had made the worst mistake in their species' history, and they were about to pay for it. Tony, how much explosive material did you bring? Jake asked. Tony grinned and patted one of his equipment bags. Enough to crack open that station like an egg, but we would need to get inside first. I have been thinking about that, Jake said, pulling up the station's schematic on the main screen. Amy, can you hack their docking bay controls? Give me a few minutes to break through their security, Amy replied. Their computer systems are heavily protected, but human hackers wrote the book on breaking alien encryption. While Amy worked on penetrating the station's defenses, Jake outlined his plan to the team. It was dangerous, probably impossible, and definitely insane. It was also exactly the kind of plan that had made humans the most feared species in the galaxy. We are going to dock with their station and walk right through the front door, Jake explained. Amy will make their computers think we are a Zephyrian supply ship. Tony will plant charges throughout the facility while Danny and I rescue the children. Lisa will keep our ships ready for a very fast exit. What about the 12 warships? Lisa asked. They will not expect us to attack from inside their own defense perimeter, Jake replied. By the time they realize what is happening, we will already be gone. Amy looked up from her computer. I am in their system. Their security is good, but it was designed to keep people out, not to stop someone who is already inside their network. I can give you maybe 20 minutes before they realize their computers have been compromised. That should be enough, Jake said. He looked around at his team, these people who had followed him into hell itself and were now volunteering to do it again. Everyone understand the plan? We go in fast, get our people, and get out before the Zephyrians know what hit them. Tony finished assembling his explosive devices and started loading them into a carrying bag. Jake, what if there are more children than we can carry? Then we make 2 trips, Jake replied simply. We do not leave anyone behind, ever. Danny Walsh stood up and slung his rifle across his shoulder. When do we start? Jake looked at the wetty, massive alien station floating in the cosmic darkness ahead of them. Somewhere inside that fortress of metal and technology, 47 human beings were waiting for rescue. They probably thought no one was coming for them. They probably thought they had been forgotten. They were about to learn that humans never forget their own, and they never stop fighting to bring them home. We start now, Jake said. The first explosion lit up the outer edge of Laboratory Station Omega like a dying star. Tony Martinez had done his job perfectly, using the station's own power systems to create a cascade of failures that would keep the Zephyrian engineers busy for hours. Emergency alarms wailed throughout the massive facility as alien crews rushed to contain the damage. Jake Morrison and his team were already inside the station when the lights started flashing red. Amy Foster's hacking had worked flawlessly, convincing the docking bay computers that their stolen Zephyrian transport was delivering research supplies. By the time the station's security realized something was wrong, the humans were deep inside the central research complex. The corridors of Laboratory Station Omega were designed for creatures with 6 legs and 4 arms. Jake had to duck under doorways built for taller aliens, while Danny Walsh moved like a ghost through passages that seemed too narrow for human shoulders. They carried weapons designed for close combat in confined spaces, knowing that in these alien halls, every corner could hide an enemy. Research wing is 2 levels down, Amy whispered into their communication devices. She had stayed with the ship to monitor the station's systems and guide them through the maze of passages. I am seeing heavy security around Section 12, at least 20 guards between you and the children. Jake and Danny reached a maintenance shaft that led to the lower levels. The shaft was barely wide enough for humans, but it would get them past the main security checkpoints. As they climbed down through the narrow space, Jake could hear the sounds of the station around them. Alien voices calling out orders, the hum of machinery working to repair Tony's sabotage, the distant rumble of the 12 warships moving into defensive positions outside. They dropped into a storage room filled with scientific equipment that looked like torture devices to human eyes. Scanning tables with restraint systems, injection apparatus designed for creatures much smaller than adult Zephyrians, brain monitoring equipment that could record thoughts and emotions. Jake felt his anger growing colder as he realized what the aliens had been doing to human children in this place. Movement ahead, Danny whispered, pointing toward the door leading to the main research area. Through the door's small window, they could see Zephyrian scientists working frantically at computer terminals. The aliens moved with the quick, precise motions of insects, their forearms allowing them to operate multiple controls at once. They seemed agitated, probably trying to understand what had caused the explosions in the outer sections of their station. Jake counted 8 scientists in the immediate area. Beyond them, through another set of doors, he could see what looked like detention cells. The lighting in that section was different, softer, probably designed to be less harsh for human eyes. That was where the children would be held. Take them, quietly, Jake whispered to Danny. Danny Walsh had earned his reputation in the darkest corners of the galaxy, places where a single gunshot could mean the difference between mission success and complete disaster. He moved through the research lab like death itself, his weapon making soft coughing sounds as it fired sedative darts instead of bullets. The Zephyrian scientists collapsed one by one, never knowing what had hit them. Jake followed Danny through the lab, stepping over the unconscious aliens as they reached the detention area. The heavy doors were locked with electronic systems that would have stopped most people, but Amy had given them override codes stolen from the station's computers. The doors slid open to reveal a sight that would haunt Jake Morrison for the rest of his life. 47 human children and teenagers were held in cells that looked like hospital rooms. Each cell had monitoring equipment that tracked everything from brain activity to stress hormones. The children were conscious but sedated, their eyes unfocused and movements slow. Some of them had fresh injection marks on their arms where the aliens had been taking blood samples. Jake found Lucy in the third cell. His 16-year-old daughter was sitting on a simple cot, staring at the wall with glassy eyes. When she saw him, her face lit up with a mixture of relief and disbelief. "Dad?" she whispered, her voice thick from whatever drugs the aliens had given her. "Is it really you?" Jake knelt beside her cot and took her hands in his. "I am here, sweetheart. I'm going to get you out of this place." "The others," Lucy said, struggling to focus. "Dad, there are so many others. Some of them have been here for months." Jake looked around at the other cells. Some contained children who could not have been more than 12 years old. Others held teenagers who stared at nothing with eyes that had seen too much. The Zephyrians had been conducting their experiments on human children for far longer than anyone had realized. "Danny, start opening the other cells," Jake ordered. "We are taking everyone." While Danny worked on freeing the other children, Jake helped Lucy to her feet. The sedatives made her unsteady, but she was determined to walk on her own. As they moved through the detention area, other children began to recognize that rescue had finally come. "Are you really here to get us out?" asked a boy who could not have been more than 13. His name tag said Kevin from New Texas Colony. "Yes," Jake replied. "All of you. We are not leaving anyone behind." Amy's voice crackled through their communication devices. "Jake, you need to move faster. The Zephyrians are starting to realize that the explosions were just a distraction. Security teams are heading toward the research wing. How long do we have?" Jake asked while helping a girl named Sarah who had been having trouble standing. "Maybe 5 minutes before they reach your location," Amy replied. "But there is something else. I have been monitoring their communications. They are planning to activate the station's self-destruct system rather than let their research fall into human hands." Jake felt ice water run through his veins. "How long?" "Unknown. They are still debating it, but if they decide we know too much about their experiments, they might choose to destroy everything rather than face the consequences." Danny had freed the last of the children, but many of them were too weak from the sedatives to move quickly. Jake counted 47 young humans who needed to be evacuated from a station that might explode at any moment. The task seemed impossible. "Dad," Lucy said, her voice getting stronger as the drugs wore off. "I have been watching the guards. I know the way back to the docking bays. Some of the older kids can help carry the younger ones." Jake looked at his daughter with pride and amazement. Even after weeks of captivity and alien experimentation, she was thinking about how to save the others. That was the human spirit that made their species so dangerous to their enemies. "Lead the way," he told her. The evacuation began with 47 children moving through the corridors of an alien space station, while explosions echoed in the distance. Jake and Danny provided security, watching for Zephyrian guards while Lucy and the older teenagers helped the younger children who were still affected by the sedatives. They reached the first checkpoint to find it abandoned. The Zephyrian guards had been pulled away to deal with the crisis in other parts of the station. Tony's sabotage was working perfectly, creating chaos throughout the facility and drawing attention away from the rescue operation. But as they approached the final corridor leading to the docking bays, they ran into serious trouble. A full squad of Zephyrian security forces was waiting for them, armed with weapons designed to stun rather than kill. The aliens wanted their test subjects back alive. "Surrender the human specimens," the lead Zephyrian clicked in translated speech. Return to your cells and you will not be harmed. Jake Morrison stepped forward, placing himself between the alien soldiers and the children behind him. In that moment, he was not a retired military officer or a station administrator. He was a father protecting his daughter and every other child who had been taken from their families. Counter-offer, Jake said calmly. Get out of our way and maybe some of you live to regret taking our children. The Zephyrian squad leader made a sound that might have been alien laughter. You are 5 humans against 20 armed soldiers. You cannot win. Jake smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. You obviously do not know much about humans. The battle for Laboratory Station Omega was about to begin. The fight in the corridor lasted exactly 37 seconds. When it was over, 20 Zephyrian security guards lay unconscious on the floor, and not a single human child had been harmed. Jake Morrison and Danny Walsh moved through the alien, soldiers like a storm of controlled violence, using non-lethal weapons and precise strikes that left their enemies alive but unable to continue fighting. The children watched in amazement as 2 humans defeated an entire squad of armed aliens, without breaking a sweat. Lucy Morrison felt a surge of pride watching her father protect them all. This was why humans were feared across the galaxy, not because they were cruel or violent, but because they were absolutely unstoppable when defending their families. Move, Jake ordered, and the group of 47 children followed him toward the docking bays. Behind them, more alarms began sounding as the Zephyrians realized their security team had been defeated. Emergency lights flashed throughout the station, and Jake could hear the sound of bulkhead doors sealing as the aliens tried to contain the human intruders. Amy's voice crackled through their communication devices. Jake, the Zephyrians have activated their self-destruct sequence. You have 8 minutes before this station becomes a small sun. Copy that, Jake replied, helping a young boy who had stumbled. How are we doing on the extraction? Tony has the cargo ship loaded with medical supplies in case any of the children need treatment, Amy reported. Lisa has the engines warming up on all 3 ships. But Jake, there is something else. The Zephyrian fleet is moving to intercept us. They are not going to let us leave. Jake reached the final checkpoint before the docking bay and found it sealed with blast doors thick enough to stop a tank. The control panel flashed red warnings in Zephyrian script, but Amy had prepared for this possibility. Override codes coming through now, Amy said. These doors should open in 10 seconds. The blast doors slid apart to reveal the docking bay, where their 3 ships waited. But between the children and safety stood the most dangerous enemy they had faced yet. A Zephyrian research commander, taller and more heavily armored than the regular soldiers, blocked their path to the ships. I am Commander Zect 9, the alien said in perfect human standard. I have spent 2 years studying your species. I know your weaknesses. You will surrender the test subjects or I will demonstrate what we have learned about human psychology. The commander activated a device that projected holographic images above his head. The images showed human children in laboratory settings, some crying, some screaming, some staring at nothing with empty eyes. These were recordings of the experiments that had been conducted on previous captives. Your species responds strongly to emotional manipulation, Commander Zek 9 continued. You will surrender to save these children from further suffering. Jake Morrison looked at the holographic images of tortured human children and felt something break inside his chest. It was not his heart or his spirit. It was the last restraint that had kept him from becoming the weapon he had been during the war. Lucy, he said quietly, not taking his eyes off the Zephyrian commander. Take the other children to the ships, now. Dad, I am not leaving you, Lucy protested. Yes, you are, Jake replied, and something in his voice made her understand that this was not a request. Danny, go with them. Make sure they get to safety. Danny Walsh hesitated for a moment, then nodded and began guiding the children toward the ships. He understood what Jake was planning to do, and he knew that sometimes the most dangerous thing you could do was get between a human father and the creatures that had hurt his child. Commander Zek 9 watched the children moving toward the ships and raised his weapon. You will stop or I will demonstrate the effectiveness of Zephyrian pain inducers on human nervous systems. Jake Morrison moved faster than the alien's enhanced reflexes could track. One moment he was standing 10 feet away, and the next moment the Zephyrian's weapon was flying across the docking bay in pieces. Commander Zect-9 found himself facing a human who moved like liquid death, and whose eyes burned with fury that had been building for weeks. "You want to know about human psychology?" Jake asked, his voice deadly calm. "Let me teach you something we call consequences." The fight between Jake Morrison and Commander Zect-9 lasted 2 minutes and left the Zephyrian commander alive but very much convinced that humans were the most terrifying species in the galaxy. When it was over, Jake helped the alien to his feet and spoke in a voice that carried to every corner of the docking bay. "You took our children," Jake said. "You experimented on them like they were animals. You recorded their pain and suffering for scientific study. Now you are going to help me make sure this never happens again." Commander Zect-9, his armor cracked and his confidence completely shattered, nodded frantically. "What do you want?" "Access codes to your research database," Jake replied. "All of it. Every file, every recording, every piece of data about what you have been doing here." The Zephyrian commander provided the codes without hesitation. Amy used them to download terabytes of information about the alien experiments, evidence that would eventually be shared with every civilized species in the galaxy. "Station will explode in 3 minutes," Amy announced over the communication system. "Everyone needs to be off this platform now." The children were already aboard the 3 ships when Jake finally arrived. Lucy threw her arms around him, tears streaming down her face while the other rescued children cheered and cried with relief. Tony Martinez had the cargo ship's medical bay ready to treat anyone who needed help. Danny Walsh was already plotting their escape route through the Zephyrian fleet. But as their ships lifted off from the exploding station, Jake Morrison was not finished with the Zephyrians. He opened a communication channel that broadcast to every ship in the alien fleet and every inhabited world within 100 light years. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the human race," he said, his voice carrying across space to reach millions of ears. "For months, the Zephyrian Collective has been kidnapping human children for scientific experiments. Today, we rescued 47 of our young people from their laboratory. But this is not over." The 3 human ships accelerated away from Laboratory Station Omega just as the facility exploded in a ball of nuclear fire. The blast was visible for thousands of miles in every direction, a beacon announcing that humans had come for their children and would not be stopped. "The galaxy needs to understand something about our species," Jake continued his broadcast. "We do not start wars, but we finish them. We do not seek conflict, but we do not run from it. Most importantly, we never abandon our own. Any species that harms human children will face the full fury of humanity." The Zephyrian fleet tried to intercept the escaping ships, but Lisa Brooks piloted them through the nebula with skill that bordered on supernatural. The alien warships designed for open space combat could not match human ingenuity in the chaotic environment of the Kepler Nebula. 3 days later, Jake Morrison and the rescued children arrived at Earth's orbital stations to a hero's welcome. The Federation Council, faced with overwhelming evidence of Zephyrian crimes against human civilians, formally censured the collective and demanded massive reparations for the families of the kidnapped children. But the real change came from within, the Zephyrian collective itself. Their research into human psychology had taught them exactly what they needed to know about humanity's capacity for both love and violence. They never again attempted to take human prisoners for any reason. Commander Zect-9, recovering from his injuries on a medical station, filed a report that would be studied by xenopsychologists for generations. His conclusion was simple and terrifying. Humans are most dangerous when they are protecting their young. Recommend avoiding all contact with human families. Jake Morrison returned to his position at Frontier Station Alpha, but he was no longer just a station administrator. He became something more important, a reminder to the galaxy that humans would go to any length to protect their children. Lucy Morrison grew up to become a leading expert on interspecies relations, using her experience to help prevent future conflicts. She often spoke about her time in captivity, but more importantly, she spoke about what it meant to know that someone who loved you would never stop looking for you. The rescue at Laboratory Station Omega became a legend throughout human space and beyond. It was a story about the lengths parents would go to save their children, about the bonds that held human families together, and about the price of underestimating the most dangerous species in the galaxy. The Zephyrians had wanted to understand what made humans so effective in combat. In the end, they learned that humanity's greatest weapon was not their technology or their tactics. It was their absolute refusal to accept that anyone they loved was beyond saving.